And reading stuff, can you please?
Yes, we're opening the FiPAC meeting at 7:01. We'll read the rules of conduct for virtual meeting. This is a web-based call and also an in-person meeting. We're operating under the following procedures. The session is both video and audio recorded. Commissioners' staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting. Will generally be keeping the video on themselves throughout the meeting. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disruption, they may be immediately ejected from the meeting upon recommendation of staff or chair. The public input for the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.org within 24 hours before the meeting. The public input during the meeting, your comments shall be submitted through the chat feature in Zoom, or wave your hand and request your mic to be unmuted. Please include in both methods your name and address.
Thank you.
Well,
I'll have to call it order officially. Unless there's an objection and insistence on the motion, let's switch items 3 and 4 to the pledge of allegiance now.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, audience, you have anybody on your magic technology?
No, nobody in chat. And we did not receive any public input prior to the meeting.
Okay. I'm doing the math. How many people do we have here? Well, 6 in attendance, I guess.
Yes.
What constitutes a quorum in terms of approving the minutes? Only 3 attendees at the meeting. So. All right.
You have, you only need 4 for the quorum. Correct. So you have 6.
Yeah, with the,
You at the meeting with the minutes, 3 of you are here.
Yeah.
You're there.
But
Well, yeah,
the 3 absent should abstain and the 3 present can vote when it's still carried.
Yeah, and it's still.
that was my
Oh, right,
question.
yeah, thank you.
Would 3 be enough to pass?
Right, because they're voting, they're just abstaining. They're
Actually,
just,
correct.
yeah, I think it would pass.
I would say
Then we know Robert's rules.
I
Close enough.
think you're good, and if it's a problem,
Yeah.
we'll work on
yeah.
it.
Yeah, well, Kenny is here.
I'll take it for it.
First of all, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes for the meeting, special meeting on June 8th.
I'll second. Any discussion?
I just like to apologize, I had the wrong day on my calendar, I just assumed it was Wednesday,
Yes.
I apologize, it was Tuesday.
I always did that once.
I've done it more than once,
My
actually.
wife was anxious to get me out of the house this year.
Keep your calendar. Sorry. Thanks.
Any more discussion? Or in that case, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain. Abstain. Lauren.
I not abstain. I. Sorry, it's kind of hard to hear you guys. It's a little echoey.
Okay. Next is correspondence. Anything in correspondence catch anybody's eye? I'm not moving right along. New business. Update on the American Relief Plan. Tell us we got a lot of money and know exactly how we can spend it.
Well, we got a couple weeks ago, $795,000 overnight, almost not 707, like almost $796,000. 2010 of that has been spent because we reimbursed Eastern Highland Health District for facility usage for the vaccination clinic they put out. So we're down to 794. We are still waiting for further guidance. There are some ideas milling around between capital, the public clinic, School needs anything, what's another idea?
Yeah,
Oh,
air
the-
conditioning.
The air conditioner, if it counts towards ventilation as well as, there's one more. Oh, the broadband, about seeing if we can help families who do not have an internet access who fall into that.
And then infrastructure upgrades.
Is there anything new from the people who write the rules?
There's supposed to be another updated version coming out, we haven't received it yet. So I think, they've been taking input from various towns and stuff across the country. We're gonna do another ruling or update, and send it out, but they haven't used it yet. Unfortunately, we have 3 years to use it still, so I think they are guys to have questions to things until you, we have to report everything, apparently. So, report. I think we're lucky it's only annually, but some of the other big cities and towns may have to do a quarterly report. So we're still waiting for another CCM meeting to talk about us considered non-committee. So, we're waiting for that meeting to come up.
Stephen, was there wisdom or anything?
I talked to Congressman Courtney's office. I will be meeting with him probably 2 weeks to sit down, and talk exactly about this. But in preliminary discussions with some of his upper staff members, I threw a couple of examples of things that we would like to use the money for. And I put them in the categories of morale, welfare, safety, outdoor infrastructure, and part of the, I'll name 3 of them, the Pavilion at Rec Park. They said they didn't think there would be any problem to put that on the American Rescue Act. The Department of Public Works, if we were to expand facilities down there, so drivers who had plowed all night can get off the road, maybe take an hour nap or something, grab a shower and some meal or something, we could do something like that. In addition to that, there was one other thing, which was maybe some of the air conditioning in the building because of fresh air recirculating the air. They didn't have a problem with that. Preliminary problems, all those things right now, they thought would be ideal for what the money should be earmarked for. I think Friday they're coming up with more guidelines. There's still a lot of questions, but I felt positive in some of the things that Columbia could use and should use the money for.
What about Bloomingdale? Is he involved at all?
Not a bit. He may be, but I haven't talked to his office. Basically, it seems like the congressional team has more of a handle on how to answer these questions, where I haven't heard anything from Blumenthal or Murphy's office on it. I haven't seen anything in print from either one of them, so if they had anything to say, it would have been there.
Thank you. Anybody have questions, comments? Okay. Ben, you ready to listen to me?
Yeah, so preliminary. The numbers that went out in the, are preliminary as of the other day. So we're looking at basically between revenue and the county board of ed, there's no surplus of debt. Around $969,000 going back into the general fund, which is basically about $634,000 more than what we put on the budget document. The revenues just keep coming in between town fees, and real estate, and building permits, and I think a property tax came in about 99% this year, which is definitely a high for us. I think some old debt, old outstanding or delinquent taxes came in. And this is despite having the interest tank, less fees coming in from preschool and the municipal aid came down for ECS and student special ed. So overall, I think the town made up for what the state a lot of the town operating seems to be around salaries. With COVID, we didn't have like as much floaters, usage of floaters, and it wasn't as much overtime with the winter. We think some of that, some staffing changes, some of the with public works and facilities, there was savings this year. Probably there next year, because we have to raise salaries. Even some of the professional services down in the, I think the state trooper came in about 7,000 or 8,000 below budget. So he didn't have overtime and things like that. So overall, we did well. The Board of Ed is also the spending they thought they reduced the amount that they're going to spend at the end of the year. They did get quite a bit of technology put in. They had some grant funds, about $20,000 they needed to apply to it, so they spent $550 on technology. And so they'll be giving back at least 270. It could go more because there are some COVID reimbursements that I need to apply also to the town. There's some money left over from the COVID relief fund, the additional fund, the state of Connecticut. So these numbers are definitely going to change. It's going to increase.
So Board of Ed, in addition to the 900, yes,
So the 900, yeah, the town too, there could be some more adjustments going in there too. These are not final numbers. We still have to put in the final payrolls and all that. So these numbers are just preliminary and they could change. I'm expecting it might go over in March. And I just gave you a summary of the capital, where we stand as a capital. But whatever projects are ongoing and still funded or plus whatever is in mind that we're going to have different stuff for next year. So, so far, so good. I think the capital is all right. Questions?
questions, comments? No? Okay. Budget review and expense monitoring procedures. We only got threw out a whole bunch of ideas as we were trying to close out the last budget session. And people were, some saying we should be reviewing in more detail, some saying we shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. So let's throw those ideas on the table and see if we can come to some resolution. Who would like to go first? Okay,
So I just would like to have a better understanding of how money is actually spent. When we're looking at the budget proposal. I didn't bring it with me, but the column that says how much they spent last year and how much they was budgeted last year is always the same, because the amount they spent is both what we approved plus the adjustments that they make. So they always equal. But there should be separate columns, so we know what we approved, what they transferred, and then what the actual expenditures were, just so that we can see.
The town is the same, the town is the same way. Those are final numbers that are in that document.
Yeah.
So you're asking me to add another column.
well, wait a minute, do they have to be? Or do you need another column? Can't you just keep the original budget?
I
And
can
then
do
the
that
final-
too.
final spending? So
Right,
it's side
what
by
was
side.
approved and not showing the transfer, I mean, I don't care what the extras were, but what was transferred, I didn't do math ourselves and
So
see.
it's original final, and you need to look at it,
Yeah.
something must have had a transfer, because you know, they're
That's easy, right, because they're different, right,
so simple
okay.
without extra work.
I think it would be helpful, because then we can see trends, we can see if there's something that, you know, consistently is over budget or consistently under budget, and we need to assess why it might be happening.
You happy?
I can get that. Sounds like that's saying yes, so.
Oh, yeah. Anybody else? Warren, you awake?
Is there?
I'm muted. I am awake here. I next time I'm gonna have to come because unfortunately, the video is awesome, but the sound is a little hard to hear.
Okay, Jeff,
Is there a way we can get a little more information on where the school spends their? I mean, I know we can't tell them where it's spent. But can we get a better breakdown of exactly what they're doing with it? I mean, it doesn't, we give them like $15,000 every year for floor tiles.
that's for what?
Floor tiles or ceiling tiles, things like that.
Well, they're probably still in the middle floor tiles.
Well, did they actually do that or? is
So I
it-
think that's what the two columns will show, because if we gave 50 for floor tiles and they didn't spend it, then they spent it on something else. We know
That's in,
that.
that's in capital, so
Yeah.
whatever in capital is spent
It
on
was
what it
like
says capital. Operating is different, operating, they're allowed to, just like the town, they're allowed to, if they need to transfer to a line, then let's move the money to another line.
Follow what she said.
But capital is capital.
Yeah, and the capital report does have spending right next to it. And remaining balance.
You know, my thought on this is simply, you've been on FiPAC for a long time. And matter of fact, you were involved when we were having issues with the school not giving us all the information, not identifying how they were spending money and so on and so on. And I think you
talk a little louder, so Lord.
I'm sorry. Basically, I'd like to hear from you, Ernie, about how we can better improve the system, or whether or not we need to better. Because I think you did a good job of getting handle on things 7 or 8 years ago. Do we need to fix something that may not be good? Basically, I'm asking your opinion on it.
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that. It's not broken for me because I think it's a level to understand what's going on and what.
I rely on you a lot.
The real question for me is, does anybody else feel like they have a lack of information? Kelly's expressed exactly what she had to. Feel informed for this stuff about the process. I have to do until the end. What do you think there's anything in that can, or do you, or Judy?
I think the budget process is good. Being here as long as I've been here, I've got a good handle. What I do is track of where some things go. You know, but I don't think we really need to change the way we're doing it.
Okay.
Just one thing related to the Board of Ed budget and still being a newbie, and this may be an issue for Lauren or Ryan, is I don't really understand how Board of Ed budget is controlled by the requirements of the state.
The minimum budget requirement.
Yeah, just to comment on that, that's one of the reasons I don't like giving them more money when they're returning money to us, because that automatically moves them up a level. It's not that I'm against education or anything, but that means next year I have to give that 200,000 on top of that, even though they already gave me. They didn't spend everything we gave, and we keep raising that ceiling. So that's one of the things I get a little upset about. And it's not that they're doing a little thing or something like that, but that's where the NBR comes into play. Carol.
So the theory behind the minimum budget requirements is that they think boards of education are the best able to determine what they need, and they're afraid that finance boards in towns will, bow to the will of the people and cut budgets that the schools really need. So they say, if you had X dollars last year, you have to give them at least X dollars this year, you can't go less. And then there's very tiny amounts that you can adjust each year. But we never know what those tiny amounts of adjustment are until pretty much well into it, sometimes after the end of our budget season. So basically, we start with the assumption that we have to give them at least exactly what we gave them last year, and rarely can we ever give them less. Maybe we wouldn't need to, but there was a particular year where we had a large special education need for 275,000. That was for one child, was completely unexpected. And the next year when we didn't have that need, we still had to give them that 275,000. So that's why, again, I think what Jeff is saying is that if they asked for 200,000 in their budget, $200,000 increase, but then they return 300,000, we've now set the minimum budget for the next year and they didn't really need it. So that's, I think, the tension between raising their budget when they may or may not need it versus, and there's no right or wrong necessarily, it's just kind of, you have to have best faith to, yes, we trust the board to say what they need, but if they don't really need it, shouldn't we be keeping the numbers as low as we can?
You
That
know,
money's, that extra deal money is completely unrestricted, or
Once we
it
get
doesn't
it,
go into the lines it came from in the first place.
Yeah, they can spend it on anything.
and the other thing, you know, over the past 7 years, sitting on finance, we've never said no to anybody that came to us and said, we need more money. And they have the non-lapsing account for things. So, you know, if they were to have a special needs person move in the middle of a school year and they needed another $200,000 and they approached us, they're gonna get it. So I just don't like giving it to them necessarily up front like that to move the NPR.
But if the MBR is already more than they need, and that special ed cost comes in, and they just spend the extra money that they got.
Well, if they could, but they could also come to us and say, hey, we need more because of this.
I don't think that special ed costs them typically, like if
Yes.
we go down to $500,000,
Yes,
is it included in that?
Yes,
Yes,
but the whole operating.
That's the problem, it should not be.
Right,
So,
right. We've talked
Right,
about that.
so variable, it doesn't make sense.
But in fairness to the Board of Education, that year that they had to, the special ed child left and they had extra money, they did give more back that year. They didn't keep it, in fairness to them, they did
We're just,
over a couple of years. Yeah, well, but they actually gave more back that year. So, I mean, they tried to do the right thing, even though they knew they had that, they didn't waste it.
And there were a couple of years who did decrease their budget, you know, up to 100,000. Because in a couple of years you did decrease it and there was no penalties.
Right.
And they have recalculated, changed in the MBR calculation so that it's over a 5-year trending, so that as we do cut, you know, it's just this year it's increasing, so it's gonna be part of that calculation, but they take the biggest drop, they'll allow the biggest drop. This past year or two was the bigger drops, which I don't think it's gonna be allowed for time. We don't, our population's not increasing. So that's gonna impact us getting credits to increase the budget.
What's looking at? Didn't the budget one year say, we don't need an increase in our budget, we don't need as much as we had last year? And then we actually petitioned the Commissioner of Education to allow them to go on, and they were denied.
Yes.
So it's not your statement that the State Board of Ed believes that the local boards of ed no
Yes.
You're right.
caution.
That it's not, it's the legislation that thinks that,
Yeah.
but I'm not.
Lana and I was at that meeting, we met with, the chief finance officer and the other person in charge, the assistant. She said there's nothing you can do really until the state legislators change the,
plus they find us.
that was from a
Different
long
year.
time.
That was the time before budget.
Yeah, it was way,
That was with John.
yes,
And the
You know,
final thing,
yeah, Ernie was in part of that one.
no, that makes me mad.
Yeah, we defied the state and we had to give them like $250,000.
You're an able person. Let me say, we were in compliance.
I believe you.
We followed the calculations there. There were two things, I guess, the, whatever they call it, ECS grant.
Yes,
and the minimum budget requirement calculation. The law was written for student counts two different ways. They each had their own
Different years.
different years.
Yeah.
If you followed the years in the way the law was written, which we did, we were in compliance. But they calculated it using other things that we were used to using. And that put us out of compliance. So basically, we got fined because they chose to simplify the way they do stuff. We already have these numbers. Let's use, the funny thing is, after we pointed that out in the hearing, they fined us anyway. They rewrote the law, right?
You're on the one. And they don't share the whole calculation either. They don't share the whole.
They do, they obfuscate everything, so nobody knows what they're doing.
The only thing I can get, I'm not sure I still have an answer to your question. But what I'd like to explore probably with that is to react and probably where we can reach a compromise. The report that's written that produces short board of ed numbers, we actually FiPAC and the board of ed said years ago, we went back and forth on that, we need more information, we need to figure out what's going on. And it sort of got almost to where I would have liked to have seen it, but then that's where the copy or whatever his name is.
Okay.
Whatever his
Oh,
name
that guy, yes.
is. Yeah, that guy, but then superintendent sort of rushed through this accrual of accounting process where we now accrue all salaries, or is that the right word?
Yeah.
All the salaries even before, at the beginning of the year, basically. And I just said, you know, screw it, this puts this up, this monkey wrench into where I would like to see this go. What, in summary, what I'd like to see is, I think that report sort of tells us what hasn't been spent yet. And that really is of no value to me or to anybody, because different expenses are referred at different rate, different items. Like some are paid right up front at the beginning of the year, some are paid on a monthly basis, some are paid in 2 installments. So not knowing or knowing what hasn't been spent in a column means nothing unless you know payment pattern for that item. It might be something that only is paid the last school day of the year. So the fact that 100% of it is still not spent in March means nothing. That's normal. On the other hand, something that's like supplies that I bought on day one, if 100% of that budget is not March, that's a problem. Somebody made a decision, hey, I'm changing plans, and the report doesn't really show that. So what I was trying to get to, the suggesting that we work toward in that report is basically the last column would be a 0 because it will be a projection of the variance. So you start the year, if everything goes normally, your projected variance would be 0. If, take line 1, if a teacher quit and you decided not to replace that teacher, that's an event, that should be factored in and get, okay, now we know something unusual, unexpected happened. Teacher quit halfway through the year, we're gonna save half her salary. If you could figure out a way to say, okay, all of a sudden my projected variance is $40,000. Pick one. That tells you something. That says something happened on the salary line, and I would have liked to have a backup sheet that sort of tracked that salary. Here's why I changed. So the report, if you had a question, hey, why is there a variance? You also have the information. Ms. Jones quit. Or, and also because of Ms. Jones quitting, you have $40,000 left. Then maybe they say, well, this would be a good time to use her salary to buy a new drum set. College equipment. And purchasing the new drum set is also an event. If you spend $3,000 on a drum set, then all of a sudden your projected variance for the drum set is negative, overspending by $20,000. So if those are the only 2 things that happen, everything else is still 0. You have a variance in the salary column a variance in the equipment column, and everything else is on track, so the projected variance is zero. To me, a report, something like that would give you value and just say, this is what we had to spend. You don't confuse Judy.
No, I'm thinking about accrual versus cash account.
If you want to go take a look at
No, actually, I don't overreact. I mean, either way is still, if nothing changes, if the staff doesn't change, you still have a projected variance of zero. Because
Yeah.
in what you plan to spend, so I only brought that up as an issue because we have the fiscal policy board where we discuss and agree that we're going to make a change. That didn't happen, it was just change. But I'm over it, I don't care, I just want to continue.
So I think you're right, that you're right. If we're just looking at the current year's budget, we're in March and we're not through the year. So we have to do the next year's budget before we know the end result of the current year. So the projections would be more helpful. But what frustrates me, I think, is that we go through this whole process, we don't have complete information, we can't make good decisions, and it's not anybody's fault, it's just the way we are in the process. And then we find out we have nearly $1 million in excess. When we were thinking we had 300,000. So, I mean, if we had known some of this, it might have made different decisions. And I know that there's no way we can do it because of the way the cycle falls, but I just am frustrated, and I don't know if there's a solution to it, but there's a lot of smart minds here, and people who do finance. Is there a way that we can have better information to make good decisions? Can we change the timing of when we do our budget? We have to do it in advance.
Because by statute, you have to set the mill rate, get the taxes out. Getting the taxes out drives prices.
State law determines when, gives you a deadline for setting the budget, for presenting it to the public.
It has to be by the end of June.
But maybe for, COVID.
I have a question. You mentioned the fiscal policy. And you're on, you meet like a big with them, as is the superintendent. Steve. And exactly what does that board do? Does that go over these months? So do you go over the unexpected expenses or cuts or increases on a monthly basis?
No, we have the numbers. It's policy, not numbers.
Just policy?
Yeah, keeping each other informed of what's going on with this.
So like, if we find out there's a major expense, like say, the roof caved in, and we talk about, okay, what's the plan on fixing it? Just give updates on budget issues or changes, or if your staff's leaving, or if there's just kind of, some of what's going on in the state, discuss it, just keep all the boards.
There are no limits on transferring loan accounts. Like board, right, if you've got, just say a couple vacancies and you've got an extra $80,000, you could actually spend that
Board
on
of Ed,
equipment.
yes, the Board of Ed basically is, the town gives them a appropriation. And the budget is guidance, just like the town budget. So they're allowed to overspend in certain lines and do year-end transfers to balance everything out. So here, our charter doesn't allow us to overspend on lines, we have to do transfers throughout the year.
Yeah.
But their board is, Maria makes sure the Board of Ed is aware of their statements. They do have to approve anything over 10. So she is going to spend, change what she set originally in the budget. They have to approve it. We do have that little budget meeting and stuff, so everybody's welcome to attend.
Who's on the budget committee?
I'm trying to remember, there's been changes in the Board of Ed, so I thought the chair was on it. Jim. I just can't remember. It's been a while.
So is it the budget committee or is there a
Well,
different
so there's
financial?
been a confusion there because half the board would show up whether they're on the committee or not, so Maria's trying to fix that, so we can make sure who's on there now. It's like, okay, yeah, so. But usually before a board of ed meeting, there is a budget subcommittee that it's open to.
Are there minutes?
Subcommittee, I don't think there is.
Should there be a FiPAC member assigned to that committee?
We have to talk to her about that. She's probably saying more than welcome to attend, doesn't mean you have to have a designated person. I usually put me in those. You usually go over the expenditures and the payment of bills, answer any questions, if anybody has questions about what's being spent. Any projections or if there's any changes. Always mark a consent agenda during.
So the subcommittee meets and then presents at the Board of Ed meeting, and there's a
So
discussion.
we kind of go over everything in the budget subcommittee, go through all the questions and answering. So that by the time we get to the Board of Ed meeting, it's on a consent agenda. So if anybody feels they want more discussion, then they pull it off the consent and put it into the agenda as a discussion.
I think it's a lot less transparent than we were told at the last meeting. How this is all just public at the meetings and
Well, the budget
all
subcommittee is,
discussed.
but if there are other questions that come up, they will take it off the consent. Because usually the payment of bills, just like the board, selectmen, there's not too many questions on it, since they're regular bills and stuff. If there was some further discussion about the budget, it will be talked about at the regular meeting.
yeah, but we have to approve every transfer that you guys make in town.
But not the board,
Not right. So I mean, it is public because we're hearing about it.
Time out.
but the board of ed does have a meeting where they go over the transfers and they are approved, so. that's
Time out.
usually later.
The statute 10-222 that gives the board of ed the right to spend all the money anywhere they want to. That was actually amended some time ago. Actually, it actually refers to the board of ed having to approve transfer. I don't know if they use the word transfer as a track code. It sounds like that has to be voted on. I guess technically it is if it's through the consent process. And I wonder. Well,
Yeah, that seems a little light in terms of approvals.
No, they did talk about, it. I mean, I know definitely more of the budget, because I don't always go to board of ed meetings, so I go in at the budget subcommittee and go through. In their packets, it's, and they do talk about it, so.
yeah, again, I'm not suggesting anything proper, it's just the, I need information, I reach out to do, and I would like to do better inform how we go about doing it. So, I don't know if you want to read that and give us your opinion or something.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think we're gonna reach a solution today. I don't think we need a solution today. We have a couple of months to go through and try to formulate what we want in terms of better information.
When do they have that budget committee meeting?
They're usually before board of ed, it's usually the first Monday of the month. Might be one in August, I don't know yet. Usually it's over.
Well, I can crash it.
I like Fraction.
No, I think, and I hope that they will be in a spirit to cooperate, and that if, again, that what we need, what we feel we need, what we feel we help, and we can see just as they fight.
Yeah.
It's just, sometimes, well, we're used to doing things a certain way, but people who might watch our meetings might say, if you know what else they know, so. We're comfortable with the way we do this, and we don't always give second thoughts to how it might be perceived by somebody who's watching. Somebody who tries to keep up with what's going on. So, I would think that we would be open-minded we come up with something definite that we think with us. So let's continue to think about that and look in that direction.
Papers, paper.
Anything else on that?
I have a question on the, I think it is in the chart.
That's the FiPAC portion of the new chart.
I have a question on this. I've been asked to be put back on the youth services committee and Bill O'Brien asked, and he asked if the charter was changed so that FiPAC members can also be on the committees. Now, the wording here is no member of FiPAC shall be a member of any other agency. How did you define agency?
On page 1 of the chart.
What's your thought?
It's in the chart, it's in definition.
Oh, it's in the chart.
And you don't have page 1, I think you don't have page
So I
1.
got-
We're going to page 2, right? Should be-
So I'm assuming that this would not change and would not be able to be
An agency means any elected or appointed town board, commission, officer, or committee of the town.
okay.
Say that
Only-
again.
An agency is any elected or appointed town board, commission, officer, or committee.
But elected or appointed.
Let's make it real simple. If we handle cash and money, we can't do anything else. No
But
place else.
let's go back to agency, because elected and appointed doesn't
So
apply to.
youth services is appointed by the board.
I have a little power. That's it.
So everybody who's on a committee is basically,
The bottom line is, when it comes to finance,
right.
they don't want any of the.
I actually agree with the policy, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So Mark, this is only the proposed charter as relates to FiPAC.
Right, so it'll be voted on at the November referendum.
And is this final? So they decided, did they make the same rule for the board of selectmen? That no member of the board of selectmen can be on any other agency or town?
No, they don't do anything.
It's just like.
No, I know, we asked them if they would change it. If it was gonna be, if this rule is gonna apply to us, it should apply to the board of selectmen.
Board of Selectmen do not have the final decision on money. It has to be approved through FiPAC, even transfers. That's the
Right.
issue.
Well, yes, you do.
But you get to ask for it.
You can override any decision we make by going to a town meeting. So you.
That's a town meeting.
Yeah.
That's how the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, the board tells us what they want to transfer. I mean, we don't arbitrarily go and say, hey, Beth, go transfer something.
I haven't
We
done that.
should.
If you ever try to tell Bev what to do with the money, she has her bricks around. She's not doing that just because I asked her. Believe me.
I'll have Beth. Commissions.
right.
Committed to myself.
You good, Dick? You might not like to answer that.
I don't like to answer, but I understand it.
Okay.
You might to adjust the agenda to add transfers. That's easy.
I didn't realize you were on 4-year terms. I thought you were on 2-year terms.
Or,
Oh, we had him going. We're gonna move the cow here.
we're out of here.
Since we. That's was a minute from tonight's agenda, I guess. And since we really want with the board of selectmen about the power, so we should put it back on.
Yeah.
I move that we bring the agenda to the headquarters first.
Second.
We do a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I raise my hand in favor.
Thank you. Okay, we have transfers. What's up there?
Some of these are the year, I'm hoping this is it, but never mind.
So we have, there are 6 transfers. The first one is $4,858 for the contingency. One of the beach that the moorings needed to be inspected and a lot of repairs need to be done. We replaced their chains and other things so the boats don't flow away. So they hired somebody to come in, get underwater, they did filming and a report. So we need $4,858 put into the lake management repairs and maintenance fund. Second one is $2,210. Lily Waste is coming in a little on higher than usual. They're no longer getting more credits for single stream recycling. So we're taking it from the salary line and the transfer station line, because they had extra money in there since a good part of the year, so having 3 people, we had 2 people there, so that's the professional tech one. The next one is another $5,100 from contingency to pay for the inland wetland salaries. We had some turnover and also additional training for the new people that came on board. So this transfers to cover all the additional salaries needed in that line for the year. The next one is $1,325 taken from town clerk legal notices to pay for salaries in town clerk. There was a medical leave that couple of months, so they had to get coverage in that office, so this is to cover the salaries for budget during that leave. There's $815 from transfer station contracted services to cover, again, another bill came in for Willie Waste a year in, like the last 2 days of June, so we had to pay for it, so that's to cover the final bill for Willie Waste for the year. So that's, and then the final one is $8,625 from public works salaries going to the building inspection facility line. When I did the budget way back with all those crazy transfers, I didn't realize that there was a floater that was hired for facilities to help out at the senior center for some of the building projects like painting and floors. And so this transfer would cover his salary, to move the salary line into the property department. That's all.
Questions before we have a motion?
I move that we approve the transfers as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Was that the question or just?
Yeah, no, well, I got a couple of questions, but if they don't, then we can do it after we pass it.
Okay. Then all those in favor? Opposed, abstention, did you? Abstentions, unanimous? Okay,
Just a question, are all the moorings used and occupied now?
Yes.
Okay. It's another one here, now it's floated away. Oh, yeah, I see your center painting and all that with the lady that runs it. I mentioned it before, we could have got seniors to come in and volunteer to do that. I'm a senior, I'm paying every single day. It's not unreasonable, just because you're old, doesn't mean it's free.
Well, there was COVID and there was limited access in there. They had Harold and Tristan was in there doing some of the stuff, and then Harold resigned. So when they started looking to reopen again, best thing to do, which there was another transfer for we hired somebody to take care of it. And you guys did that transfer.
I heard Dick, he would have volunteered.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need a Pollock original in there.
All right, I'm just always trying to save money. I just think they did it.
Actually, because it irritates me, Lily Waste. Do we ever send the trash collection or whatever it is out to bid? And
I
they,
know we just.
Are there any other companies that do it?
But I think
They
we did.
negotiated There's nobody else to go out there to.
There's no
Basically,
other.
this is it.
There's nobody else to go out to.
So we get
they're
compared to other
monopoly.
towns. Yes, because it's, the cost of transferring to the center is the big cost. So the farther you get away, it's gonna be.
And unfortunately, our recycling is gotten, people just throw dirty stuff in there and it's contaminated, so what credits we were getting are gone.
Educating our residents on proper recycling is probably the best way to cut
And
it
I
off.
think you need to do that,
Get it
there's
out
stuff
of
coming out of there.
China's not buying all the
They don't
stuff
want it.
anymore, so it's, whether it's dirty or not, you're not getting any money for it, period. So,
It just seems like we're almost always approving a transfer because some overcharge by road waste, it seems. that
Well, it's
they're-
not like an overcharge, it's just
It's-
unfortunately we're not getting the credits, and over the last 2 years, really, the credits we were getting
Used to be
And-
revenue.
was help reduce the bill, and it's not there. So, we're not getting it.
So what's the difference in driveway metal?
So we're getting the,
Wait, we wanna
The
get
like-
metal into our scrap metal.
so we get
and
money for that,
You
we get
want,
money for textile
you
recycling.
don't want our plastic in household waste, you want the plastic in the recycling.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Carton. You want
They
clean carton.
they just take it back to their facility and they say, okay, this was in the wrong bin, so we're gonna charge them extra for that.
Well, we have single stream recyclers, so it kind of different mine, but if they see there's, I guess people are just throwing whatever, wherever they go up there, so there's contamination, like, you go in there and there's jars and plastic containers that are full of food and stuff, that just contaminates the whole load. That they take away,
And they can't get as much for it.
not necessarily the cardboard, it's the other
It's
stuff.
cost more.
Right, that's what they tell us.
Well, they used to have inspectors find towns. And the worst were with roadside pickup, because when the machine goes, boop, you don't know what just went in
They
there.
have cameras.
At least our attendants can keep an eye on our residents and advise them and help them. Don't have that.
Yeah.
I guess there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, the front loaders actually have video.
When you have those little bits of custard every time, I drive, actually.
Trying to help.
For the two. Thank you.
I only learned in the last 2 years, you're not supposed to put golf carts in recycling.
Oh, because they
And I'm
wax,
very, yeah, and I'm
wax
very,
coating.
committed to doing it. So,
It's part of the education. It's gonna be.
You can't,
I'm very interested in preventing pollution and recycling and all that, but it's impossible. Every time you turn around, they're changing the rules.
Right.
It's like, what's the point anymore?
We're gonna start making visual
Exactly, the
visual
backyard.
posters of what's good and what's bad. That's next.
we're doing it, so.
People don't read. it's-
are we still on that topic, anything else? Anybody have comments before we adjourn for the night? Okay.
You have an audience of citizen at the end?
No, you're a member of our group.
Yeah, okay, so I have a few things to talk about. Okay. First of all, when it comes to the transfer station, the people down there, I asked them personally to not cost you, but to help you in your direction on where to recycle. The abuse
Just
that
Ernie,
they take,
just Ernie.
the abuse that they take,
None from me. I
not
assure
from
you.
you, from a select few, is uncalled for. They're there to do a job because it costs each and every one of us additional money, okay? That's number one. I had to find room on my thing to scratch that in.
None of us are reasonable.
Number two, I think we were fined $253,000 the year we were fined that money. The next year, we had 7 students move in for a total of $475,000 in special education, which they went to the general fund, and we had to get it for that.
Yes.
The next year, all of those students moved out. We had a surplus, but NPR had increased $470,000. That's when we asked for the relief and was denied. So that's that. About your question about the Board of Ed and their budget, how they spend their money.
The town's transfers go through FiPAC. You're notified every time you transfer money. Have an eye and can ask questions about the budget at any time. I can understand how you may feel that it's not the same with the Board of Ed. The fact that she mentions the paying of the bills prior to the meeting, and yet it's an official, plus public is okay to attend, and yet no minutes are taken. I think we need to look at that, because you, as the FiPAC, should be able to go and look at those minutes if you have a question on how Board of Ed money is spent. I always thought it was, you give us the money, we'll spend it how we need to, and don't ask any questions until the end of the year. I apologize if that's the way I feel, but apparently, to some maybe smaller extent, many of you feel the same way. We need to look at that. But in saying that, every year, everybody on these boards, Board of Ed, Board of Selectmen, and the FiPAC, do their job. And they do it well. I am amazed and thankful of the job that they all do, especially when it comes to the budget season. It can be contentious at times. We may not get all the answers that we're looking for, but in the end, we always put forth what we believe is a good budget for the town. It's not perfect. Like this year, I'm surprised we're getting maybe $900,000 transferred back to the general fund, but it's being transferred back to the general fund. And that's important, because we give the school X amount of dollars, and they could spend every bit of it and not give any back. We trust them, and that trust is reciprocated and earned because we continue to work together and they give back money. That's how we do it here, and it's worked well. So, and the bottom line is, I think everybody does a wonderful job. I know we have questions. I know sometimes we don't get all the information that we're looking for. Deb and I have had our discussions, believe me, because I am a bit anal when it comes to the budget. And she says, I won't have that number for 3 months. And I feel like, you know, I need it now, I need it now. I've learned to understand a lot of that. But again, it's trust and belief in each other. So there's a few things to work on. Want to know about the board money? Board of Ed, find out when the meetings are and attend. If you want to know about the town money, you go to Bev through us, you can ask about it. This is my editorial, and it's not open to questions, because Robert's rules say I can just steal it. So we continue to work well together. We can improve it, and that's some of the stuff that I heard tonight. So I thank you all for the job that you do, believe me, because it's not easy when we're playing with people's money. You know, I have people in doctor's offices who can't afford to pay for their medicine when they have to put food on the table, and in winter worry about freezing to death. So I see it all the time. And the fact that we don't raise taxes is a wonderful, very, very wonderful thing for people to do. I'm done, thank you.
I have a question. I'm not sure what the question is. It goes back to the relief money. How do you see the board of selectmen operating, or is there a timetable or planning sessions?
It has to be spent by 2024, I believe. This year and next year, we should get the same basically amount of money. So we,
796, but
somewhere in there, so we're gonna end up with 1.5 something. So we will entertain different ideas, but they will, in my mind, I will look for improvements for the people of the town in recreation,
I will look for improvements in safety. Improvements for people who work here, safety and, I call it habitability, but it's being able to, somebody gets sprayed with grease at the shop, they should be able to take a shower down there, they should be able to take a rest when they're plowing, that type of thing. But people saying things like, I'm worried about saying something because somebody out there is gonna want it, I know they do. But a very large expenditure just to spend the money, and you look at it and go, we'll never be able to sustain the budgeting of that or the upkeep of that once the money's gone and this is built.
The ice hockey rink is out of the question.
Ice hockey rink is out of the question. The Whalers are not coming back yet. So, it will be voted on by, I guess, the people of the town.
I guess I'm thinking about how we get to that point. We're going through the budget process and operating totally from a position of ignorance, because there were no rules. What I did was I took the capital project plan and I laid out the items, and I said, based on what I know, over the 5-year period, this looks like the sort of thing that we could spend money on.
Yes.
Would it be worthwhile doing that again, or based on what you know?
Excellent. I spoke to Mark 2 days ago and I said, we need to sit down with the respective members of the boards, representatives, and talk about a 10-year plan. Because right now we put, in some instances, $100,000 away for a 7-year plan to get a new fire truck in 7 years. We could use some of that money for that, but that doesn't mean we take that $100,000 and not spend it, because in 8 years, we're going to wonder why we have to go up hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest or save for the next go round. So it's a very fine line about how we do this, spend the money, but also continue to save for the future on different things. It's easy to use the fire truck as we turn them over probably every 10 to 15 years. We need to. So those are easy things. But there's things like in the capital I asked for, rec park, the pavilion up there. A new pavilion up at the back end to cover the girls softball, the playground, the soccer fields, instead of having everybody go down and use the Little League concession stand and the 2 bathrooms down there that are not really accessible to everybody. Put the pavilion up there for another concession with ADA bathrooms up there. I'd like to do that. I think it would be good for the town. So that's recreation and welfare type of thing. So there are a number of things that were in the capital that we took out because we didn't want to charge into this. And that was wonderful planning, because it looks like we're going to be able to handle a lot of one-time expenditure things, but also put away or make money available to other things that we save for that will help in the future, not to increase the amount saved or the tax rolls as we see it. It's a fine line, but it will be a 10-year plan, and yes, we will be getting together for that.
Is that fiscal policy that we'll get together and make that? I mean, it's an existing commission.
No, I think, well, having been to the fiscal policy board, it is talked about there, but I think it's talked about there as a, this is where we are, and this is what we're looking at. I think it would be wise to get subject matter experts like the fire department and certainly the finance department, somebody from FiPAC if you want, somebody from recreation, somebody from infrastructure and buildings to talk about what we're looking at in 10 years.
Well, we used to have a long-range planning
Right.
committee, it's just bringing it back.
That'll have to be,
But it's not an agency.
no, it's just a committee.
But
Keep
if
me
I
on,
report
it's an
it-
agency.
No,
It's planning.
it's a committee or whatever. Not a
It
commission.
has no spending.
Yeah, I said, we're Columbia, we're in good shape. We are in very good shape. I mean, you take a look at what we have in the town, the library expansion 3-4 years ago, we're in good shape. The firehouse is more than current, we're in good shape. The school, we may need to put some money, but it's not building a school, it's continued improvement or renovations, we're in good shape. Even the old buildings here are in pretty good shape. We don't have a lot that we're gonna have to spend a lot of money on, but it's wise financial planning that we continue to go down the road, that we save the money, that we're there, that we don't go out and go, oh, we need to bond $4 million to put up this, and this. It's just, I don't see it. So,
Yeah, but again, if we could put together some sort of working document that progresses some change.
Yep.
The reason I like to see something is if you look at the last budget document, the capital projects page, ignore the relief money, that's a scary scenario, real scary. There's no way we could do that page without raising taxes substantially. So it would be nice to know if in your judgment, these things that we can use relief money for, what does that subtract from that scenario? I last looked at last.
right, those are that, and that's a good point on that capital thing. There was some big dream stuff on there. It was $3 million for the Department of Public Works.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need a $3 million monstrosity down there, but we can take a look at it and see where we are. I get what you're saying. I understand.
Yeah, I know.
We will.
Start writing stuff down, it'll start to make sense.
Whatever happens in the November election, whether I'm here or whether I turn it over to somebody else, there will be a document that they can look at and go, this makes sense, let me tweak it how I want to, but it makes sense because it's going to come from subject matter experts from all departments.
Anybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
Hi, Lauren.
If the ARP money comes in half this year and half next, and we're not allowed to reduce taxes,